is a D6 generation Pip. Yeah, one of those dots on the side of a six-sided die. Yeah, a Pip. You know, a short Pip. Little something. Yeah, about anything gaming related. Sometimes featuring Craig, sometimes featuring Russ. We'll see what's coming up today.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm very excited about this. I'm Raef Granger. With me is...
Hey, it's me, Russ. And Raef, how do you know it's the afternoon?
It just is for me. And so whenever anybody's listening, it's all about me.
Check.
Yep.
So,
that's
well,
right.
Raef, thanks for joining us again on the D6 generation here. You know, having Mr. Hollywood on is very, you know, I wore my nice tie today just to make sure.
Yeah, right.
Very classy. My finest mask I have.
Your finest mask.
Yes.
I love it. Well, this is another D6G's GM Academy.
Okay.
And Russ and I are going to chat. And I'm going to also, for those of you, this is awesome experience. For those of you on Patreon watching video, you're going to get to watch me eat my dinner.
Ooh, and okay. So the first patron to tell us what's on Raef's pizza.
Ooh, that's a good one.
You know,
do we have any prizes
Raef,
to give away?
Raef will give you a shout out in the next
shout out
player or GM Academy. Raef, you have to take a responsibility. Email Raef Hollywood Granger what's on his pizza, and he'll shout you out next time.
Yeah, and to make it simple, because I do think I have I think it's Hollywood at the D6generation.com.
There you go. Okay, that'll work.
Get to me. Hollywood at the D6generation.com. But as a backup, you can do Raef at RaefGranger.com.
All right.
Spelled RAEF as in Frank.
All right.
Okay.
I like it.
Yes, and I'll do my best to not go like this.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll be the judge of that, Granger.
Okay.
So what are we doing today, Raef?
Hey, GM Academy, so this is aimed at, I'm going to ask Russ questions for helping anybody who wants to GM and just talk about our game session.
And this is our second GM Academy, right?
This is our second GM Academy.
Number 2. Yeah.
Do you want to go with your very first question, or do you want to save that and go with my questions?
Well, if now you've just revealed behind the curtain that I gave you a question to ask me.
That's fine. You can give me a question. It's not a secret.
Well, I just wanted to mention one thing, because actually Seppi brought this up in one of our sessions, and he said, you should mention this in one of your DM Academies. And so one of the topics I wanted to make sure we covered today, Raef, and I don't know, you've GM before, so maybe I'll ask you this question, except I noticed you just took a huge bite of pizza. But the topic is,
it's fine.
What do you do when you do all this prep work as Dungeon Master? You know, you set up, especially when you have a situation where the players could go several different places, or maybe there's a few places that are probably in series, but there's always an option your players do something weird. Maybe they abort halfway through, or someone gets a crazy idea to go a different direction. What do you do when you create content and then your players don't go there, right?
Well, I love that question so much that I ask that of you, Russ, since you're the GM. Okay. What do you do?
Well, I came prepared. Actually, not really, sort of. I actually run into this problem all the time. And the answer is you use it anyway. You just move it.
So I was going to say, it doesn't appear like you're flat-footed.
No, you don't ever feel like anything is stuck in one place. So I've created in the past, for example, there's this little warehouse, and this is not in this campaign we're currently in, but like this is a little warehouse, and I create this pretty interesting trap from scratch, or I create this really cool, watchman character who's patrolling the house, or a really cool villain who I wanted to introduce there, let's say, or a really cool clue that I was hoping the party was going to find there that was going to be the hook to something later. You can either move the entire warehouse wholesale somewhere else. So instead of it being the warehouse in the middle of the city that you were in the dock district you expected them to go into, maybe suddenly they're now exploring some little cobalt cave somewhere, and there's still a collection of boxes there in a similar situation that you tweak slightly. Or so you can move the entire thing, you can move just the character. But as you create this stuff, don't think it's, well, I made that section of the world and no one's going to go there now, so it's lost work. Simply take parts of it and replant it. And I've often replanted entire dungeons or a floor or a room or major characters and just reuse them elsewhere and repurpose them. And what's kind of fun is a lot of times when I do that, they become cooler than my original intent, because the act of moving them makes me think of some other cool ideas that folds it in.
Now, this sort of either segues or branches from an original GM question, which is it fun if you, quote, railroad the characters to that warehouse that you created? Okay. So in other words, let's say we're in the city and you've got the warehouse adventure all prepped and we don't go there. One option we should discuss is the GM goes, guys, sorry, I didn't prepare the manor house. I've only got the warehouse prepared. I thought you were going to go there, right? That's sort of tier one. And I'm going to make a comment and see what you think about it. But there's sort of this belief, either written or unwritten, that we don't want to do that if all possible. We don't want to.
Yeah, I never try to say you can't do that because I'm not ready. So I don't think I've ever done that. And I usually have enough, like when I'm creating leads. This is another thing. So one of the things I do, and I think I may have mentioned this last time, so this might be a little bit of a repeat, but I always, I do use a lot of pre-made stuff. And the reason I like pre-made stuff is that usually the designers of these books cover all these situations, right? They have many of these side things already nailed down for you. But then before each night session, I'll try to prep, meaning I'll reread it. I'll kind of know everybody's name. I'll try to know the motivations of everybody involved. So if you decide to go to the manor and I was expecting you to go to the warehouse, well, at least I've got a manor prepared, right? It's just that I wasn't. Now, there's a backup plan that every DM should have in their back pocket. More about that in a second. So if you go to the manor house and I've got one prepared, but I just hadn't prepped for it, I'll prep on the fly, right? When you get there, I'll put a funky looking character out front, make you ask a few questions, create a distraction for the players, hopefully get the players talking. While they're doing that, I'm reading through all the material, right? But the ace in the hole you always have as Dungeon Master, I would say, never say no. It's really important you never say no, because then you start to make the illusion breaks that they're on rails, and it makes it clear there's rails, or it makes them clear they have to always tell you where they're going. The trick you have in your back pocket all the time is random monster encounters that are not random. What I mean by that is always have, if you know your character is going to be in a city for a while or running around in nature for a while, always have a pretty cool random, I'm using air quotes, random monster encounter, right? That can delay your party, make an interesting moment, and that'll give you time between now and next session to go create the warehouse that you didn't expect.
That's interesting. I like that.
So this is one of the reasons I really like shorter sessions, 2-hour, 3-hour sessions, because usually when you throw in a random monster encounter like that, then it'll take the rest of your session. And now the trick to this is don't make it just a standard random monster encounter like you roll and it's 6 sturges, right? Or whatever. That's not very fun. Try to have some of these encounters ready to go that are kind of neat. A couple of unique monsters, a unique situation, a lovable character's being robbed or something that gets everybody excited about it and they feel like it's part of the story. Better yet, one of those cool NPCs you made earlier they ignored, bring him into the random monster encounter, right? Like bring some of that into it, make it a cool random monster encounter. Even better, throw some hooks in there to the story. That note you're hoping they're going to find in the warehouse, put in the random monster encounter. But here's the cool part, that'll distract them so you can make the warehouse. So the party will always feel like they can go wherever they want. And you as DM just may have to control the pacing so you can have the next venue ready. But the big thing is, if those random monster encounters also have story elements in it, right, or something interesting in it, then it won't feel like a random monster encounter. It'll feel like, oh, this is part of the story also. How did my DM know that I was going to walk down this particular alley? So he had that note ready for me. That's really critical because it was also leads me back to that warehouse I wanted to go to anyway. Good thing we thought of the warehouse, guys. Aren't we so smart? And all you're really doing is changing the breadcrumbs and directing it to where the characters are going.
Oh, that's brilliant too. So I do want to say that up until about a month ago, I would have said the same exact thing of like avoid at all costs putting the characters on rails, which is a video game term, I think, which is to say the game directs you where it wants you to go, not where you want to go.
Right.
And this just happened in the campaign that Doc is running, the Salt Marsh campaign, where It was one of those, though. It wasn't warehouse to manor house. It was like the adventure hook itself has like 5 areas of adventure hooking, if you would. And we did seem to indicate that we were going to go towards adventure hook area number 2, which Doc had all prayer. But we sort of just made an audible, and we're like, let's go to the island, right?
Right.
And so Doc did something like, I think he was like, yeah, it's funny. Your ship just doesn't seem to be approaching the island. And we're like, And then he was like, and then he like broke character, and he was like, no, he's like, I just didn't prep that. And we were like, no, okay. And we very quickly went to the other thing. And it, although he, broke the illusion of it, it didn't. I don't know if it was because we're all experienced characters. And I think I appreciated that rather than his nose be buried in a book and rather than him spitballing it, he just fessed up. And then we were totally fine. And we skipped over it, took a heartbeat, and we went on to the new adventure. So it actually
I do the same thing. It's just that you would have been attacked by pirates. Right? You wouldn't have made it to the island either. You just would have been attacked by pirates. Now, the difference is you would eventually get to that island. I would just have between that session and next session to get the island.
Yeah. We're going to go back to it.
You're going to go back to it. Exactly.
Yeah.
So either way works. I just like, and this is just a GM style, because certainly you could have the style with your party like, hey guys, and I kind of do this too. So the other trick I do, Raef, and you notice this, right, is I'll say at the end of the prior session, what are you guys going to do next? Right. In last session, you guys are like, well, we want to go.
Said that. But then what do you do? We had said what we're going to do
but
next.
Then you guys have changed on me before too. Because the one time you said, well, here's a good example, right? So one time the roleplay charisma crew was like, we're going to go check out the cave in where that bugbear and see what is going on. You were definitely going to do that. And then the very next session, you guys are like, nah, I don't want it. If you remember, I even said like, are you sure you don't want it? And like, nah, we don't want it.
Now that you're bringing it up, I'm remembering that.
And I'm like, crap, they're never going to go to the cave in again. So I was like, and I'd already worked it out. I mean, what's going on in the cave in right now is all fleshed out. But here's the funny thing. So fast forward a month, just last session, you guys are like, let's go scout at the cave in. I got nothing to do now. It's all ready to go. Awesome. So it's there still. And I started doing things, right? If you noticed, things have been happening in the world that have made the cave in kind of annoying that you didn't go there much earlier. Right. So that's
one of my questions for you.
It's fun to kind of tease the players with like in the Salt Marsh example, let's say there's pirates based out of an island and your mission was to go kill the pirates. Well, you could choose not to do that. But every time you go somewhere else, there's these pirate raids that are happening that are freaking annoying, but it's because no one's taken out the pirate island. So eventually you guys are going to be like, stupid pirates. Let's go. This is our fault. And you can have those townspeople complaining all the time. I wish someone would take care of the pirates, and little kids being murdered in the street by pirates. And eventually the players are like, man, we're jerks. We got to go kill these pirates. So that's the kind of the way I like to do it too, is just kind of make the players feel bad in game for not addressing the thing that maybe you kind of thought they should address.
Well, now that I've filled my belly and I can now concentrate. So all you video watchers, the pizza's now done. So
I hope you caught which type it was, because it's over now.
You got to email it in. What was on the topics? Okay. Yeah. So first of all, I want to just compliment you. Like, this is one of the best, if not the best, Dungeons and Dragons scenarios I've been in.
See, I feel like you're blowing smoke, though. Really?
No. I'm going to tell you why. I have lots of reasons why.
All right.
Okay. One of them is what you just said. Didn't come off the rails. Get attacked by pirate ship. I didn't know that. I didn't know that was your secret trick, right? So in other words, I'm as a player going, how the hell is he doing this? He hasn't taken this thing off the rails once. And he always seems prepared. Well, now you shared one of your techniques. So don't necessarily think you're blowing smoke, because that's one of the elements that I didn't know. And it doesn't ruin it now that I do know, but that's why I'm saying it. Well, here's another element I have for you that I want to ask you about.
All right.
You have an ability to leave no stone unturned, but not in an annoying way. So in other words, we just I don't know how up to date everybody is and watching, but we just let a couple goblins go. Okay.
Yes.
Now, normally we commit mass executions all over the place.
Right. It's really a very dark party. It's kind of,
I know. I like how Seppi said early on, okay, so we're Moradin's murder squad. And everybody's like, no. But
no. And now they totally are.
Essentially, we are. We let a couple goblins go. And the whole time I'm like, Russ is going to spit those back at us at some point in time. There will be some consequence to those two little gobbos running away, right?
Right.
You're really good at that. The best example is the orc. No, the
hobgoblin.
Hobgoblins with the face thing on his face that pirate singed, coming back around, trying to convert people. That's brilliant. How do you do that? Teach the listeners how you do that.
Well, I like, so the other thing I think that's really important and is that my world and my characters and my story. See, I just said three things there that are wrong. I said they're not mine. I don't think of them as mine. I think of them as ours, meaning the dungeon master is the referee. I'm not entirely, I don't think of myself as the storyteller. I have the most role playing to do in many ways because I run the most characters. But at the end of the day, it's our story. And this is what I think helps using a pre-made adventure. So because I use a pre-made adventure, it's not my world. I didn't make this world. Wizards of the Coast made the world. I'm like you guys. It's like I got a pre-generated character. It just happens to be the world. Now the world can change. So I don't mind. And here's another secret for one of our players too that may not know. So when early in the campaign, you, Raef, and Seppi did something I thought was really cool, is that you would just both start saying stuff that became canon instantly. Like one time in one of the towns, I gave you the things that were going on in the town, and Raef, you just started adding color to your character's aunt who lives in the town. You just making stuff up. Like, I don't know if players knew or listeners knew that it wasn't like I had given Raef this 80-page essay on his character's aunt. I'd given him like 3 bullets. Like, she lives in this thing. She's got a son, which is your nephew, and she's or whatever, and or whatever. And you were like just going on and on. And meanwhile, like Seppi sometimes will just make stuff up about a particular town or a statue. I'll be like, yeah, you rolled a 20 on this word, and Seppi will just make the etymology up right on the spot. And I think that sometimes annoys some players, but I think it's awesome because I don't care. And so sometimes other players will be like, well, I looked it up on the internet, and according to the internet, in Faerun on the Sword Coast, dwarves believe this. Well, that may be true, but in this particular part of the D&D multiverse, which actually is a thing, if you look on the Dungeon Master's Guide, it's very clear that every instance of Dungeons and Dragons is its own version of this. And some of them start and some of them don't. It's a multiverse. You can all be in the same universe, but there's a separate shard, there's a separate little sliver of Faerun, of the Sword Coast, just for this campaign, right? And all I've done is added it to the other slivers that my other players have been in, so it's the same world we all live in. So by having that attitude, when you guys say, hey, I'm going to let this guy live, or I'm going to ask this bugbear to become a cook and launch an inn in a cave, or I'm going to try to convert this hobgoblin, I'm like, sure. And if you remember last DM's Academy, I said one of the things I like to do between sessions is think about what my antagonists are doing, which includes all these guys you let live. So I'll make notes. I have one of the things I do is I have last session summary. It's a little document I keep. It's in Roll20, but if you don't use Roll20, it could be a Word document or a notepad.
Ooh, this was one of my questions, is how you keep track of all this.
And I just have bullets for each session date. And I just write down things that happen that I think should matter and that might be interesting.
Okay.
Like, Kobold got away on the fly. I named him Grumble. Like, I don't know. Because sometimes I just make people's names up. Like, I don't know. I have a couple of the name generators online that I use a lot. And I try to pre-name most of the guys, but I don't always get to them. And so I'll just make up on the fly. But I'll write the name down and it'll become a thing. So I'll write their name down and it'll be a thing. And I'll say, like, that'll gotta be fun to use. And then what's fun is, like, in the future, so I'm in a situation, I'm making a new layer, or a lot of times I don't make them from scratch. Like I said, they're pre-generated, but there'll be like 10 kobolds and a kobold leader. And I'll be like, it'd be fun. Let me go. They let one guy live. I can't remember. Let me go. Oh, yeah. They let a guy live back here. Why don't I rename the leader to be that guy and give him a couple extra skills just for fun, right? And so that's what happened in the castle. And in Cragmaw Castle, there's just a hobgoblin captain. Well, I was like, I'm going to make him the same dude because that'll be fun.
I see.
And so I just went through and just renamed him that guy and made him there. And there are actually, what's fun is there are actually, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, but there are actually some level of campaign objectives and reasons that the persuasion, let's just say, that Joe's character is doing and Seppi's character is doing aren't working. Like there's actual reasons for it. It's not just so for listeners who haven't gotten there yet or who haven't been following the show but are listening to this, they keep trying to convert these bugbears and hobgoblins and goblins to be good. And it doesn't seem to be working in all cases. And they're trying to figure out this big sort of like, well, is it not, are we just rolling bad? Is it that the DM doesn't care? Is it that they're trying to figure out what's going on here? And actually there's a very fundamental reason that I think Pyric, Seppi's character, just stumbled upon, and he actually has some insight into it now, which is going to be fun to watch. But really it's to back to your question, Rafe, it's really just keeping track of some of the things you guys do. And it's not that every single thing you do will affect the future.
Yeah, no.
The illusion is as long as you pull one or two occasionally,
that's what I was going to say. It
creates the illusion that the living world is altered by you having stepped there.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. We might never see these gobbos again.
Yeah.
Never. But because you pulled the bugbear back into play, now I'm like, and that creates for interesting player dynamics and to make it makes it feel like it's a real world. Okay. Technical question.
Yes.
I keep notes when I'm GMing. I make bullets, and I never can find them again. It's either they're not searchable. How do you actually go back? How do you create it so that you can go back and find it?
So this is where I've found that a couple of tools are really good. Probably the ultimate tool for this used to be a sponsor of the show. So Lone Wolf Development's Realmworks is a fantastic tool for this. Okay. However, I no longer use it, not because it's not perfect for it, because it is. And the reason it's perfect is it uses this sort of web of keywords to connect everything together. So you can always remember that this +1 longsword that so-and-so has carried actually occurred at these plot points and links back to this room you found it in, and it was in this castle carried by this NPC, and you can link it all back. It's amazing. And if you're that passionate about this, and it's a lot of fun, by the way, I would definitely recommend Realmworks by Lone Wolf Development. It's the ultimate way to do it. However, and I used Realmworks for the first 3/4 of my family's like 5-year Tyranny of Dragons campaign. Loved it. But when we started to switch online, I would switch to Roll20, and I just felt having two systems was too much work. Now Roll20 is good. It's not as sophisticated as Realmworks with the linking. I mean, Realmworks, you can create your own calendars with your own dates and your own numbers of days. I mean, you could do all kinds of crazy crap in Realmworks. Roll20 is not that. I mean, where Roll20 shines is the shared screen and the rolling of the dice and everything. But it's got a very simple folder file system where you just have folders and you put files in them that are different things. And so what I do for my notes is I always make I have a running notes last session thing, which just has a date and all the things that happened last session. And then I do have sort of high level folders for each major sort of chapter of the campaign as I see it. And then the related things are in there that become sort of permanent. Like if someone finds a magic item, like the Axe Hue that Joe has, that becomes a permanent thing that the players can see and that we all have notes about. Major monsters, when a random kobold all of a sudden gets a name and becomes a major NPC, I have a folder for named NPCs over there, and he becomes
okay. So it's called named NPCs, so you don't have to be like, "What the heck did I name?"
You can name these folders whatever you want. You might call it named NPCs.
That's what I'm asking.
You might call it arch nemesis, but I have that. I have a named NPC folder. I have a monster folder. Okay. I have a magic items folder.
Oh, that's what I'm asking you.
And then I have the chapters, and so the chapters are where the main things go. So in the current chapter, like what's going on right now about trying to get to the mine and everything else, that's all top of mind. And there's like 4 or 5 major things there with major objectives. And I think about that stuff, but the broader strokes, the next few chapters, they're painted, but it's just broad lines. There's not like a lot of detail in there yet.
Okay.
But some of the guys in this chapter might pop back up there. We don't know yet. We'll see who lives.
Okay. The other thing I love about this game is the monsters seem to be unique. So like you had, I think it was the badass skeleton or the ewe. And so that's why it's really fun is I'm not like, oh, it's a doppelganger. We all know what that is. I still don't even know if it is a doppelganger. Could be, might be something completely different. Are you using like Monster Manual number 4 to get all of these?
I do a little bit
monsters?
of both. So a couple tricks. So Roll20, I do like So one of the things I got really into when my kids first started playing D&D and I introduced it to them was I had the joy of realizing I had players who had never stepped into Dungeons and Dragons.
So fun. Right.
So
they don't know what a kobold can do.
They don't. And they don't know what a kobold even looks like. So I was, from the beginning, I wanted to paint vibrant pictures for them and show them how cool the world is and what a kobold is and what a skeleton is. I just didn't want to tell them, I wanted to show them. So from the very beginning, I always had a big monitor behind me for my kids when we were playing in the same room. And I would throw images up on that monitor of the different monsters they're going to run into. So some of my prep is just finding cool pictures for these things. Now, what's cool about Roll20 is all the major D&D books, you can buy the digital version and all the monsters are there and you can pop the images up for your players. The only problem is that it puts the name of the monster in the top of the box. So when the box pops up, it would say doppelganger. And so one of the things I had fun with my kids was I would change the name on the top. So when they would see something like a giant tree coming forward towards them, I would say giant tree, not ent, right? Because I wanted them to discover what an ent was. And they wouldn't know what an ent was anyway. Plus, John was always in the room. And I was always afraid, and John was good about this, but I was afraid he'd be like, oh, that's just an ent, you know? And so this way he would, and the best part was, and I still do that. So in that room, when that creature was there, and you decapitated this thing and it suddenly transformed what it was, I intentionally made sure I found a picture that was the non-standard version. So if you Google the internet for your favorite monsters, you'll of course find several different flavors. There's fan art, there's the Pathfinder version of these things, there's other mythology versions of these things. So I'll try to find different pictures and throw them in. So you're never quite sure. Even veteran players are like, is that actually a doppelganger?
I know,
or is
it's
that
enough to make you wonder.
Exactly. Now, I do also have all the monster manuals. I do have the amazing Tomb of Beasts and Creature Codex books from.
Are those D&D books?
What's that?
Are those D&D?
I'll show you a picture. So if you're watching at home, this is one of them. This is, here you go. This is, you can see how thick it is. This is, let me turn my background sharing, my virtual background off here so you can see it better because this messes up these sorts of things. It's loading. Sorry about this delay. Turning my virtual background off. So now you can see this is quite a large book. And you can see there's another one here. This is the other one. And these were actually, I believe Creature Codex was first, I think. And I think Tomb of Beasts is second. And then there's Tomb of Beasts 2. So there's 3 books this thick. Now these books, what's cool about these things, they're by Kobold Press. Now Kobold Press is sort of a spin-off. I'm going to say this wrong, but they're one of the art's beautiful. It looks and feels like it's an actual Wizards of the Coast D&D book. It is all 5e compliant, right? But it's all these new monsters, and a lot of this stuff is like more of the same, just variants. Like here's another cool, but it's a Necrogast or something.
Okay.
Right? So, but if I had this art, you'd be like, well, that's not the normal D&D 5e ghoul. That must be something else, right? And then what's also cool is because they have a few extra little actions in here and stuff, all of a sudden they're doing things. So, for example, the ash zombies, right, are like normal zombies, but they breathe the ash that have a chance to make you have to make a constitution save or you cough, right? And you lose you advantage. And that's just a little tweak on a zombie, but all of a sudden it's a different kind of zombie. And you're like, what's this about? Right. So like, there's all kinds of stuff like that. So the trick is try to get a few more creature books, and they do cost money. John was kind of to give you some of these for Christmas, but what's cool, these are actually also in Roll20. You can buy the digital version of them. And now they're just a search away. So when I go and I'm like, I need something like a kobold here. I go into Roll20, I can type in kobold. I don't get just one kobold. I get like 15. And I can choose, and it might be coming out of here. And there's little icons. It might be coming out of Xanthar's Guide. It might be coming on Mordenkainen's Tomb of Foes. You know, I'm looking at all the books up here on my shelf. It might be coming out of any one of these things, and it's there instantly. So even in a random monster encounter, I can be like, well, I need a couple of kobolds, or I need a hobgoblin that's kind of powerful. Oh, crap. Or I need a drow or whatever. And I can get some pretty hefty, cool options. So that's kind of what I do. But I always make sure I try to rename the titles unless it's a creature everybody knows or you fought a lot of them. Like at this point, calling it a hobgoblin is pretty safe, or for you guys, or a kobold or that kind of thing. Does that make sense?
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the fact that they're 5e compliant answers another question I had on this, which is if you're like, well, it's a giant spider, but I just change it from spitting webs to spitting fire. Right. And it seems like anytime I've done that, it doesn't work right because I'm not good with understanding power levels or something. Like I'll either make it way too powerful and be like, oops, didn't mean for that to happen. You know, like I'll read from a dragon or something, you know what I mean? And I've noticed that doesn't seem to be the case, but I think you just explained it. It's because you're using 5e compliant stuff.
Yeah, I generally try not to, I do change monsters occasionally. Sometimes I'll give them extra spells or a magic item. Either because of the plot or one of the challenges, and John and I talk about this a lot, is really hard with larger party sizes. Like a party of 6 is hard because there's so many player actions before the monsters go.
Yes.
So you either need lots of monsters, which can be hard, or which slows the game down a lot, or you need very powerful monsters, but they almost need to be overpowered, which gets into a situation where, like the Cyclopses, where you can probably take them, but if the Cyclopses have a good turn, they could wipe you guys out, you know? So you get into these situations where you're trying to make it challenging, but you're also trying to not accidentally kill the party.
Yeah, it's funny. It's almost as if you take, I'm no mathematician, as all of you know, but we have 6 players and then you take the monsters. It's almost like, it's not like we're 6x versus the monster. It's somehow we're an exponential component of that.
And there is calculators for it, but I'm not sure how
why
good
that
are.
is.
Yeah, so I've been experimenting with that. And all I can say is I want the characters I want certain battles to feel like there's a chance you will fail and potentially die. There should also be battles where it feels like it's a no-brainer, like the kobolds trying to sneak by you guys at night and didn't work out. But when it's a critical battle, I want it to feel like you at least feel like you have to be thoughtful because it could be someone could die or all of us could die if we screw this up. So it's tricky to find the right balance. And there's always a danger when you start to get to spellcasters who can counter a party of 6, because some of their spells can really, 2 or 3 fireballs in a row could wipe out the best of adventuring parties. So you have to be, our party's pretty good about that sort of stuff and they watch it. But that's where you can throw a little DM's grace in there. And I don't try to do DM's grace like, oh, the dice rolled a 20, I'm going to change it to a 5. Instead, I'll do a thing where like, oh, maybe the bad guy will do a less smart thing right now, or make sure I'm not using my DM's perfect knowledge to ensure this bad guy does the perfect tactical move to give the players a chance to kind of recover from a tough situation.
So that was one of my questions for you is, and why this is the greatest game of all time, is because your encounters seem what you just said, balanced enough where we're like, this goes wrong, we could lose some party members here. So they're tactical, they're thought through. I don't get the sense you're just hand waving and going like, oh, the Cyclops mixed, like we see the rolls. So that takes away that illusion. And I wanted you to educate, which you just did to some degree, on how you create that balance. So, but let's go back a little more granular. There's 6 players. We've got spellcasters. We're experienced players. Is there some sort of calculator in the back of the DM's guide or something?
So there is. There's a calculator in the Dungeons and Masters guide, and I'm going to look it up. There's actually several online that I use. Monster. Let me see if I can find it. I always call it the wrong thing. Monster encounter generator. Here it is. So there's one online. There's actually a bunch of these. Let me see if this is the one I usually use because I don't. Yeah. Okay. So there's So there's one on the. I'm going to give these guys credit. I've used several, so I'm not saying these guys are the best or the worst. And it certainly doesn't hit every single monster. And I believe D&D Beyond, the official Wizards of the Coast one, also has one of these. So, but I'll go to grab different ones of these at different times. But the one I use a lot is Goblinist.com. So it's GOBLINIST.com.
I love these names.
If you go there, you'll see that you pick the level of the player. So let's say we were doing this current party, right? You guys are all level 4. You'll see there's an add player button. So you can actually keep clicking add player level 4 and create a party of 6 level 4 players. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right?
I see.
And then you can also pick the difficulty of the encounter, easy, medium, hard, deadly. You can then pick sort of an environment, mountains, hills, whatever, underground, whatever you want to do.
Okay.
And then you can sort of pick a range of monsters and you can generate and counter. And it'll create one. In fact, this one just created a hobgoblin captain with a goblin boss and a hobgoblin warlord, another goblin, a wolf, and a hobgoblin. And even tells you the XP value, and it tells you the link to the Dungeon Master's rules about how they figured this out. So it's using the formula in the back of the DMG for this stuff. Now, what I have found is this is pretty okay, but I still got to throw in a couple extra dudes. And I don't know if that's because our party's really good or whatever, or I think it's really because the DMG system is based purely on the XP level of the characters as compared to the XP level of the monsters. And when it's not factoring in, to get a little board gamey here or miniature gamey, is the number of activations.
Right.
Because if I were to generate this again, now what's interesting about the one that just got generated is there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 monsters in this one. That's pretty good. There's actually more monsters than there are players. But I'm going to click generate that again. Now it came back with like 7 berserkers. Okay, that's fine. But sometimes it comes back with like, this was interesting, 13 fairy dragons. I would like to try that. Actually, I kind of want to do that one now. So if you see 13 fairy dragons, Raef, you'll know why you got that. But basically, like, but the problem with that happens is you very rarely can get 13 enemies on one room box, so they're spread out, and you're really only fighting 5 at a time. And just whacking through them, right? So it's a little tricky to nail this down, and some of it takes practice. The other part about it, I would say, is it is going to vary greatly on the tactical prowess of your players, and I don't mean like how really smart they are or good. It's just how inclined they are to care that much. Sometimes you got guys who just charge around and do stuff. And sometimes you got guys who really like to think. We have kind of an interesting mix of people who do both. So it depends on your party. And I think it really depends. And also depends on how much near death you want your parties to have. But I find that I start with these things and I add to them, and I'm starting to get a feel for the other thing that's hard is the tactical situation the players, how they approach the monsters really, really matters. So for example, going up against 8 hobgoblins, but if the party has surprise, very different than if those 8 hobgoblins have surprise on the party. Or if the 8 hobgoblins have tactical advantage because they're on top of a wall with a bunch of scorpions pointing down at the bolt throwers, pointing down at the characters, you know what I mean? And that's one you can't figure out an XP, right? So like the Cyclops encounter got bad because the party had total surprise on the Cyclopses, which should have been a huge advantage. You could walk away, you could sneak in and assassinate him. And I tried to warn if you remember, if you listen to that episode again, there was some hints that the Cyclops were starting to hear the argument going on in the party, and the party just didn't care. And it's really because the players who are hardcore into combat forgot or didn't know the stats of Cyclopses because they're actually quite good. So but it's okay. But it's like, and we were fine in the end. But that was a situation where if you'd gone in keeping your stealth, would have been a much less scary situation. By going in without stealth and then piecemeal also, because everybody ran in one at a time, it became a bad tactical situation where you were way outpointed and became a problem. And so that's where, as a GM, I'll start to do things like, well, Cyclopses are kind of stupid. So let's go ahead and roll an intelligence check on the Cyclops to see if he does something dumb and non-optimal. Because it's very easy as a GM to go, well, party did something dumb. Let's teach them a lesson and do the optimal tactical maneuver for a Cyclops. When the Cyclops is like intelligence, 8. So he's probably not going to do the smartest move. Meanwhile, hobgoblins, tactical military machines, it's right there in their profile, high intelligence. They all operate together. They get bonuses for working together. They should operate as an intelligent military machine. And that's a bit of a different encounter. Does that make sense?
Totally. And this is where I've fallen into slippery slopes, where I, as the GM, looking behind the screen and being like, oh God, one club swing could kill our mightiest character. Then I'll start to change things. And then because I've changed things, I now don't know, am I making it too easy? Am I making it too hard? What if they die? So with your rule of thumb, do you just always go, well, let me see if they act dumb because they're Cyclopses? Or do you only start to do that if it looks like it's going to be bad?
It depends. So I read a really good blog a while ago, and I actually bought this book, and it's a fun light read. And the name of the blog is also the name of the book, and it's called The Monsters Know What They're Doing. And it's by this guy, Keith Ammon. I'm sorry, Keith, if I pronounce your name wrong. Fun book. It's on Audible. You can listen to it. It's a fun little self-published thing. If you go to themonstersknow.com, this is his website, and he's got all these blog posts about different kinds of monsters and how they might behave, right? And it's a lot of fun. And I think since then, not just him, but there's other guys who come out with there's like, I saw a Kickstarter for Monster Tactics deck where you pull out a card and it kind of tells you this group of to mix it up. Because hobgoblins in the world are always tactical, but it doesn't mean there aren't a group of tactical kobolds who've been practicing for years, So another way to mix it up on your party and surprise them would be to have tactical kobolds, right? So think about your monsters, think about how you want them to feel. But basically, I do like this guy's point, which is it shouldn't feel the same to fight kobolds and goblins as it does to fight hobgoblins, even though they're all goblinoids, right? Because some are martial and wear half plate and really train all the time, and some don't. So it should feel different. And it should feel very different than a hill giant or a cyclops. And a storm giant should even feel different than a cyclops, even though they're both giant type creatures. So, and then even so, all types of dragons should feel different. Like a wyvern is not really a dragon, so it should feel different fighting a wyvern, which is almost more like a flying natural creature that's shaped funny, versus a highly intelligent dragon. So like these should all feel different. And how can you do that? And there's some great articles online that kind of cover this. And it really comes down to tactics and the way you move those things. And I think Seppi once said, "Oh, Russ, with these hobgoblins, you're playing it like a miniature gamer." I'm like, well, yeah, because they're strategic tactical guys, which I'm doing completely different from like when you fought a bunch of zombies running out of a tower, because there were a bunch of zombies running out of a tower. So hopefully that feels different, because that's what I'm trying to do.
It does. And so to that point, let's go back to the tactical hobgoblins.
Yeah.
Like, are you sitting there going like, oh boy, they are all grouped up. If I cast a fireball, I could kill somebody. Like how, in a bad way? Because I guess what I'm asking you is, how do you find your edge of referee?
Oh,
because
so
the goal is not to kill us, but the goal is also to make it pasty pie either. So how do you decide whether to cast that fireball or not?
Well, I try not to have a situation where the enemy can one-shot you. So I know. Okay. So that's a great question, actually, Raef. So even with that calculator, I'll look and I'll say, well, would one fireball wipe the party out? No, unless it rolled extremely well and nobody made their save and everyone's together. Even then, it probably wouldn't kill all of you, right? So odds are one fireball would be very bad. It would suck. And then I can decide after the one fireball, okay, is this the kind of thing where the mage, does he have two? First of all, if he doesn't, that's better. If he does, maybe that's good. In fact, this is one of the reasons Cragmaw Castle got kind of scary, even though you guys got out of it. Joe did a really smart move there, because there were two of these casters, each who could cast 3 fireballs.
Right. So this is what I'm trying to talk about. We didn't know that.
So what I would do is look for the opportunity, and you guys did a really good job. You knew this. And so you did it because you already fought them before. So you did a really good job of like keeping the door closed and doing all these strategic things, which were awesome. And then there was a moment where everybody kind of forgot and one got through. But then after one, you all remembered again. And also you did a good job of spreading out, and there was a second team. So you guys did a good job of figuring that out. But if your players, what I would basically say is to give the players fear, make sure there's at least one good attack that can really mess the party up, but won't wipe them. And then have reasons in your back pocket, monster infighting, lack of trust, incompetence, stupidity, whatever, to be able to not play the second attack.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like have a plan as a dungeon. This is where my DM's grace comes in, where it might be a great move for a second fireball, but maybe it doesn't happen. The guy's distracted, or he's unsure, or he doesn't know perfect knowledge, or he just makes a bad intelligence check, or he really has a grudge against Pyric. So he casts magic missile.
This is really good. This is really good, because as a GM, I don't view myself as very tactical, which is probably why I worry about this kind of stuff. I'm sitting there and I'm like, dang it, a second fireball is just going to kill everybody.
Yeah, so don't do it.
But why? But then I'm like, but the monster's not going to, I don't have a reason for.
Or maybe he wants to take a prisoner.
Fireball. Maybe that's what I'm getting orders. At. I never thought of this way before. That he could be like, well, he's the apprentice and his master's there and he's worried about screwing up. Like if I went into it with just a little bit of backstory, I could not feel like I'm gaming or wrong word, wimping out on the system to just make the characters live.
And I've added story to situations to save that sort of thing too. Like maybe there's something very fragile in the room. And so the magic user's like, oh, I can't cast a fireball. And you'll have him say it. Like, he's too close to the workbench. And all of a sudden the player's like, what's on that workbench? You know, and now you're like, crap, let me go Google a quick magic item for the workbench. But you know, like a scroll. But now there's this cool MacGuffin. So one of the things I think that's fun is battles become more fun when there's things and mini objectives and sub-objectives that sort of show up in the middle of the battle. Like, you don't want to burn down the inn. So if you cast fireball in the inn, the curtains are going to get on fire and you're going to burn down this poor guy's inn or Auntie's house, right? And you're guys trying to put the fire out in Auntie's house at the same time to kill the bad guys. So it wasn't just kill the bad guys. It was like save Auntie's house, right? Or, you know, there's prisoners hanging on the wall that you don't want to die. You have to keep them alive. And the monsters can have the same restrictions, right? So just like the players can have these sorts of problems, the monsters can too. And so you can factor them in. Maybe they're under orders to take one invader alive. And so, or two invaders alive, or maybe the last time they killed everybody, the boss was really mad. So you can come up with these little reasons and then have the monsters say it out loud, like have them get into an argument with each other, you know, like have the captain go, don't you fire another fireball. We're under orders to capture these dwarves. There's 2 dwarves here. Can't you see that? That might've happened if Joe hadn't had the really good idea of, you know, of challenging him to single combat. So there's ways you can, and what's cool about that is you can then inject plot and get the players thinking, and there's more depth going on. And really, as a dungeon master, you're just like, oh crap, I guess you can't wipe all these guys out in one session. You know,
we have to, we both of us have to go at 6, and I need a few minutes before that to get ready for my 6 o'clock call. I'd like to pause here, but I'll leave on a parting note. And then I think we should do part 2 with you and I schedule.
Yeah, for sure.
Part 2, because I still have about 3 questions, believe it or not. All right. It sounds like then you don't ever reveal you going, oh shit. You know what I mean? Like I never see that. So it sounds like that's a lesson. Like, even if you're just like, I don't have a reason to not shoot the second fireball, I'm just not going to shoot it.
And you know what's funny?
You try to come up with a reason.
Yeah. So a lot of DMs always want to make it feel like they know the rules. And so they get defensive or concerned when the players are quoting rules to them. I'm the opposite. I am totally cool as a dungeon master if my players know the rules better than I do. John and Joe want to quote rules all at me. I'm like, cool. How do you want to roll this, guys? Now, also, though, if I've got a party of players who don't know the rules well, I'm okay winging the rules. Like the rules to me are important in terms of having a foundation. Yes. But if we do a Constitution save when it should have been a Dex save occasionally, or if it should have been DC 15, it was DC 12, whatever, you know, that's not the end of the world. However, I do think for me, the story is king and the show is the king. Right. And so for me, there's nothing worse than the show than to feel like your dungeon, there's not a consistent story and thing unfolding. So for me, where I'm going to get not defensive, but watch for is how can I make sure that the audience never sees behind the curtain, right? That's the key. So I've come up with all these little things to kind of make the illusion that there is no curtain, that the stage goes forever. But really, the stage is very small. It's only designed for a 2-hour session. And I just keep doing things to keep you from getting near the edge of the stage.
I love it. That's great. Thank you. I can't wait for part 2.
I'm excited for part 2. Well, thank you, Raef, for doing this. And I hope our listeners got something out of it. Let us know.
Yeah, let us know.
Email us either. Yeah, go ahead.
I think you were going to go there. Go.
Email us. Go to Discord. If you're a patron, you can go to Discord. You can email us. You can tweet us. You can comment in the Patreon thread. What are you gonna add there, Raef?
I was going to say specifically, email us to say, how do you handle this, Russ? Or Raef as a character, how do you handle this? We'd love to field questions.
We'd love to field more questions. And don't forget, email Raef with what was on his pizza.
Right. So Raef at RaefGranger.com or Hollywood at the D6Generation.com. Okay. Until next time. See y'all later.
See you later.
Achievement unlocked. You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by emailing us at info@thed6generation.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. Thanks for listening and happy gaming.